Hello, statistics and precalculus. Last topic of the year. I'm feeling a little cheesy, maybe a lot cheesy. We'll take a look. We've got it all ready to go. Solving radical equations, the last topic of the year. Today the basics, tomorrow some more complicated ones. We've got it. A couple notes first. By definition, square root of x, always a positive number. So 5 squared is 25, and negative 5 squared is also 25. But when you take the square root of 25, you only get the 5. By definition, it's only the positive version, which is why when you do things like the quadratic formula or solving, you always do a plus or minus with your square root. It's also why we're going to double check our answers when we're done. Squaring both sides can create extraneous solutions, and so we want to be careful of that. Just the flip side of this always being positive, it's important to notice the square root of x squared is different. The square root of x squared is different than the square root of x squared. In this case, x has to be a positive number. You take the square root and then square it and you get x. In this case, x could be either positive or negative because you square it before you take the square root, and that's okay. And you get, but you always get a positive answer out. If you typed in negative 5 for x, you'd first square it, get 25. Then take the square root, you get 5. You started with negative 5, you got back out 5. It's the absolute value. So, the steps for solving a radical equation. Step 1 is isolate the radical on one side. The root on one side might be written as either a radical or a rational exponent. Either way is okay. You can handle it. Step 2, raise each side to a power. If you have a square root, then you're going to take the second power. If you have a cube root, you're going to take the third power. If you have the 17th root, guess what? 17th power, no problem. Simplify and solve, and then always check your answers. Like I said, we're going to come up with extraneous solutions again this time, not just last time. A couple simple warm-ups. Take about 7 seconds, and we'll see if you can these. Hope you got those pretty good. The square root of what is 9? The answer is 81. Square both sides, x is 81, and check. Square root of 9, 81 is 9. In this case, fifth power of both sides, fifth power of the fifth root is x, and the fifth power of 2 is 32, and indeed the fifth root of 32 is 2. Got it. We can step up. We can do just fine. Again, in these two, the radical is already by itself, so we don't need to worry about isolating it. It's already isolated, just like all of us in our own homes. We've got the isolated square root, and so the first thing you do is square both sides. When you square the square root of 2x minus 7, you get 2x minus 7. When you square 11, you got 121. A little algebra gives you x is 64, and a double check. 2 times 64 would be 128, minus 7 is 121, and square root of 121 is 11. We've got it. On the right-hand side, a second question. It's a cube root question, and so the first thing you do is you cube both sides. Once you cube both sides, the left side will be 1/2 x, and the right side is 4 cubed is 64. X gives you 128. There we go, and a quick check. Half of 128 is 64, and the cube root of 64 is 4. Yay, thumbs up. Practice with these, see what you can do with them. Hit pause when you need to. And I hope you got x equals 8 and x equals 100. A quick check. 5 times 8 is 40 plus 9. 49 square root is 7. This one, 200 plus 16, 216. The CLE, the cube root, is 6. 2 questions here. Why is this not the same? Today, 2 questions here. The first one, 5x plus 1 is 3, and 5x plus 1, this should be a plus 6 is 3. And we'll try these out. Step 1. Isolate the radical. Add 3 to both sides. So we've got 3 on both sides. We square both sides. 5x plus 1 is 81. Gives you x is 16. Add a quick check. 5 times 16 is 80. Plus 1, 81. Square root of 81 is 9. Minus 3 is 6 indeed. This one, on the other hand, is kind of interesting. You subtract 6 from both sides. We get 5x. Square root of 5x plus 1 is negative 3. Square both sides. 5x plus 1 is 9. Work it out. 5x 5x, not plus 1, just 5x is 8. And that gives you x is 1.6. Test it. 5 times 1.6 is 8 plus 1, that's 9. Square root of 9 is 3 minus 6 is negative 3. I don't want it to be negative 3. I want it to be 3. This one does not work. We have an extraneous solution. One pro tip as you're looking at this, you might have known that it was an extraneous solution on this step because the square root can never be negative. So if you had a square root that was supposed to be negative, you're like, ooh, this has no solution, and you could have stopped right there. But there we go. So again, isolate the radical and solve and check always. Here's a couple practice questions. Again, take a minute and do those practice questions. A lot of them look the same, but they're slightly different. One trick though, however, you can take a cube root of a negative. So hit pause when you're ready. Hit pause back when you got answers. Again, the one I'll take a look at is this one here. We can do the cube root of a negative. When you subtract 7 from both sides, we've got the cube root of 2x equals negative 3. Well, you can have a cube root being negative 3 because negative 3 by negative 3 by negative 3 gives you negative 27. That works fine. So you could have a cube root of a negative number. Can't have a square root of a negative number because it's always there. So this one got you no solution, but the cube got you a solution. All right, one more level here with a rational exponent. Instead of our radical, we got a rational exponent, but the process is exactly the same. Number one, isolate the radical. Isolate the root. In this case, it's a 1/4 power instead of a radical. Subtract 17 from both sides. Divide by 2. And now we've got the root all by itself over here. Raise both sides to the power. In this case, it's the 4th power because we had the 4th root. So raise both sides to the 4th power. 3x plus 12 is 81. Do a little solving. And finally, check your answer. Try out a couple of these. And hit pause. And hit unpause when you've got them. And you can check 13 and 33.5. It all works great. You would square both sides divide by 5 and then square both sides when you're doing this one. This one, subtract 2 from both sides and then take the 3rd power. You're all good. Have yourself a lovely time. Next week, level up these functions.